The medical gentleman walked away to dinner, and the nurse, having once more applied herself to the green bottle, sat down on a low chair before the fire and proceeded to dress the infant. And what an excellent example of the power of dress young Oliver Twist was, wrapped in the blanket which had hitherto formed his only covering. He might have been the child of a nobleman or a beggar. It would have been hard for the haughtiest stranger to have fixed his station in society. But now he was enveloped in the old calico robes that had grown yellow in the same service. He was badged and ticketed, and fell into his place at once, a parish child, the orphan of a workhouse, the humble, half-starved drudge, to be cuffed and buffeted through the world, despised by all and pitied by none. Oliver cried lustily. If he could have known that he was an orphan, left to the tender mercies of church wardens and overseers, perhaps he would have cried the louder. For the next 8 or 10 months, Oliver was the victim of a systematic curse of treachery and deception. He was brought up by hand. The hungry and destitute situation of the infant orphan was duly reported by the workhouse authorities to the parish authorities. The parish authorities inquired with dignity of the workhouse authorities whether there was no female then domiciled in the house who was in a situation to impart to Oliver Twist the consolation and nourishment of which he stood in need. The workhouse authorities replied with humility that there was not. Upon this, the parish authorities magnanimously and humanely resolved that Oliver should be farmed, or, in other words, that he should be dispatched to a branch workhouse some 3 miles off, where 20 or 30 other juvenile offenders against the poor laws rolled about the floor all day without the inconvenience of too much food or too much clothing, under the parental superintendence of an elderly female who received the culprits at and for the consideration of 7 halfpenny per small head per week. 7 halfpenny's worth per week is a good round diet for a child. A great deal may be got for 7 halfpenny, quite enough to overload its stomach and make it uncomfortable. The elderly female was a woman of wisdom and experience. She knew what was good for children, and she had a very accurate perception of what was good for herself. So she appropriated the greater part of the weekly stipend to her own use, and consigned the rising parochial generation to even a shorter allowance than was originally provided for them, thereby finding in the lowest depth a deeper still, and proving herself a very great experimental philosopher. Everybody knows the story of another experimental philosopher who had a great theory about a horse being able to live without eating, and who demonstrated it so well that he got his own horse down to a straw a day, and would most unquestionably have rendered him a very spirited and rampacious animal upon nothing at all, if he hadn't died just 24 hours before he was to have his first comfortable bait of air. Unfortunately for the experimental philosophy of the female, to whose protecting care Oliver Twist was delivered over, a similar result usually attended the operation of her system. For just at the very moment when a child had contrived to exist upon the smallest possible portion of the weakest possible food, it did perversely happen, in 8.5 cases out of 10, either that it sickened from want and cold, or fell into the fire from neglect, or got smothered by accident. In any one of which cases the miserable little thing was usually summoned into another world, and there gathered to the fathers which it had never known in this.